Thank you very much for the opportunity to engage in dialogue with you. And I'm going to share both a model and experiences of working in what we are referring to as presencing. Welcome. Yeah. So, quite often, when we are in business, in any organization, it could be we work for the public sector, we are trying to move from, if I can point, from the left side to get to the right side. So our intention is to switch from current reality to space where we are performing at our highest potential. And we feel the temptation to fly past the chasm. But quite often, change initiatives intended that way end up in failure, partly because we do not have enough models, sufficient understanding of how that journey works from current reality to the place of highest performance we could. What we have learned, my colleagues and I from MIT and the Presencing Institute, researching with innovators and change makers, have come to learn that instead of attempting to cross past the chasm, the big deal is around going this way. When you move in that way, which feels and looks visually longer, but actually it is faster and less costly. So maybe we need to look at the aspect of learning. If you could just shout from where you are, how do you learn as an individual and as organizations? How do you learn?
By watching others.
Watching others? Read past theories. How else? Sorry.
I have a mic, so just put your hand up.
I said through other people's experience.
Other people's experiences.
Experimenting.
Experimenting. Take one more. How do you learn, both as individuals and as organizations?
Making mistakes.
Like experimentation, but making mistakes.
Ask a lot of questions.
Fantastic. So, in a way, you can categorize learning into two main groups. The first one is that we do learn by reflecting on the experiences of the past. So what happens is that we act, we stop to observe our actions, we offer reflections on our observations so that we can plan and continue to act again. This is also known as the Cobb method of learning, and it has served us phenomenally well. But how do we learn when we do not have enough equivalents in the past to learn from? How are we going to learn as humanity, soon to be 9 billion people on planet Earth, to coexist peacefully? No matter how hard you look in the past, you will not find good enough equivalents to learn from. How do we organize ourselves at workplaces and in families when information is overflooding us through technology, social media, and all sorts. How do we make decisions? How do we decipher what truth is, what reality is? Our era is such that looking back in the past, we will not find good enough equivalents to learn from. And this is what gave us the curiosity to begin to inquire and learn from change makers. How do they function? We found that they had another learning cycle. This cycle is less known in our places of work. This cycle is less talked about, sometimes not at all talked about in our education system. And this is learning from the future as it emerges. That humans have the capacity to learn not only by looking at the experiences of the past, but that they can learn from the emerging future. And this is what allows some among us to look into 5, 10, 20 years in coming and act in the present moment. That capacity to be able to be present. So the word presencing comes from two words. One is to be fully present. Those who learn to be fully present confront the realities of now. What is there? The beauty and the ugliness of what is there. But they do not get limited to that. They are able to sense what is on the horizon and then act in the present moment. It is that which gave us the coinage of the term presencing, being present and capacity to sense what is on the horizon. This is natural. We notice it among artists. We notice it among sports people. But somehow it doesn't feature prominently in our education system. That's why innovation feels rare. That's why creativity sounds elusive. So, presencing is what allows us to know the unknowable. It is what allows us to see the unforeseen. But also it is what allows us to be in the zone. All of us have experienced what it means to be in the zone. Moments when you are simply riding one clarity from another. If you are a writer, you know what I'm talking about. You take your pen and you put it on paper, or your hands are on the laptop, and it feels like your hands are doing their own thinking. And then after some time that stops. And you go for days, sometimes for weeks, without clarity, and then it comes again. But what I'm trying to say here is that those people who learn how to work with presencing, then they can make that happen more often than it does at the moment. The American celebrated basketballer Bill Russell talks about moments when he was at the peak of his game. He says there were moments when he could see the third and the fourth moves on the pitch before they happen. And all he needed to do was to glide through and make it happen. But then it would disappear again. How do we make that experience more frequent in our lives, more frequent at our places of work? Here is what we saw innovators and creative people do. They seem to walk this journey. First of all, they tend to stop downloading patterns of the past. We have habits that we get involved in as humans. Habits are very helpful, but once we do not learn how to suspend the habits, what do? We move through life blindly. But these guys seem to have a way in which they stop doing that. And then next they enter into the space of observe, observe, observe. Innovators and inventors, colleagues, don't migrate to Mars, pick ideas, then they come on Earth. No, we live with them in our streets. It is because somehow they have taught themselves, they have learned how to stop and then observe, observe, observe. And they see more out of the same reality in which we live. But how do you see more out of the same reality? It is by switching on at least 3 faculties of intelligence. Most of us went to school thinking we only think with our brain. It is only one of the faculties. Guess who said the following? What is wrong with our time is that we have made the king serve the servant. Any guess? What is wrong with our time is that we have made the king serve the servant. It was Albert Einstein. He was referring to the fact that the heart is the king in terms of uncovering knowledge. Its first servant is the brain. So literally, we humans tend to intuit first. And then when we intuit, what do? We ask the power of the brain, the analytical capacity of the brain, to help us make sense of what is going on. Now we know through neuroscience that actually that has always been the case. Because through the vagus nerve in our back, the heart sends more messages to the brain than the other way around. So 3 intelligences are the following. We humans can tap into the intelligence of the open mind. We can tap into the intelligence of the open heart. We can tap into the intelligence of the open will. This is not just a blood pumping machine. Our heart thinks. In many languages across the world, there is the equivalent of "my heart told me." Traditional wisdom knew before Cartesian thinking that we humans do think with our heart. And when you have a serious conversation, when you have a serious interview for the job you want, you don't experience the importance of that merely here and here. You feel it here. You experience the gravitas of something here. It's your body telling you this is crucial to you and the future you want to create. But how do we switch on the intelligence of the open mind? It is by learning to suspend the voice of judgment. That chatterbox that is in every one of us. Oh my God, I know where they are going. They are going to talk about there she comes. And so we all have a running commentary. That's not the issue. The issue is to learn to suspend the voice of judgment so that we don't miss out when new data is hitting us. And how do we do that? It is by switching on curiosity. Curiosity is the antidote to judgment. It is the ability to lean into questioning. Tell me more. Where does this come from? How do these 2 or more things connect? Who else is needed in this? Curiosity helps us to tap into the intelligence of the open mind. How do we find the open heart as a faculty of intelligence being blocked? It is because of the voice of cynicism. Because we don't know something, we label it, it can't work, stupid, it's impossible. But only to you. How do you switch on the intelligence of the open heart? It's compassion. When you deeply connect with other people, heart to heart. What blocks the intelligence of the open will? It is fear. Fear to lose, fear to be laughed at, fear to lose a job, fear of all sorts. Indeed, fear is good. If we didn't have fear, we wouldn't grow to the age that we are. But if we also don't learn the skill to suspend our voice of fear, we can't experiment. And experimentation is the mother of innovation. So, what is the antidote to fear? It is courage. The ability to look at what makes me fearful and still make the decision to experiment. So, when we have observed, the next bit we need to do is to retreat so that we can allow inner knowing to emerge. Moving straight from observation to debate doesn't help. Moving straight from observation to brainstorming doesn't help. What do we notice innovators do? They observe, they retreat so that they can allow inner knowing. They find time to reflect on what they observed. They gently talk to other people about what they are seeing. They engage with other people to allow deeper meaning to emerge from what they observed. And then somewhere here, as you are retreating and reflecting, you get sparks of ideas. Among those sparks of ideas, pick the strongest ones and don't subject them again to debate. The strongest ones act in an instant. Prototype so that the next phase of learning, you learn by doing, not by debate. It is what will allow you now to engage in a process of one iteration after another so that the idea then can transition from its beginnings towards its maturity. Artists do this with maximum ease. For them, this works easily. And maybe it's because many of them haven't been trapped into our education system that threw away this natural tendency. This was during the World Cup in Rome in 1990. Zubin Mehta and Placido Domingo were playing. They had been informed that they would do this and 6 million people would be watching them. So for 2 years, they practiced and practiced. I would like you to pay attention to who is leading who and the quality of their relationship. Placido Domingo is the tenor and Zubin Mehta is the conductor. So just quickly turn to your neighbor and talk about what struck you, what caught your attention.
It seemed that the vocalist, so the roles were kind of like reversed, where the conductor was leading the orchestra,
Yeah.
but somehow then the passion was then transferred to the conductor
Yeah,
to act in same manner
yeah.
as if they were doing it together.
Fantastic. In future work, people don't want permanent places of leadership. It's constantly evolving. It's constantly evolving, depending on the capacity, on the need that there is in a system. Thank you. Any other comment? There's a hand at the back again.
We disagreed. We thought that they worked in synergy rather than one person leading the other, that they already knew what was going to happen before it happened and already prepared a reaction.
Yeah. There was a lot, they had practiced for 2 years. They knew 6 million people were going to watch them. That's high risk in business. Playing live when 6 million people are going to watch you, you choreograph everything to the letter. One more question, one more comment, then we... Okay. Did you notice any mistakes? Very unfair question. I only know because the colleagues I work with went to interview them. Although they had practiced for 2 years and reduced mistakes to as humanly possible 0, in that moment, on the stage, Placido Domingo, the tenor, got consumed by music. He goes a few notches longer than they had practiced. Zubin Mehta, the conductor, realizes, I have 2 impulses for decision making. I could manage the risk by swinging my baton, cut the whole thing short, and you and I, the majority, wouldn't have noticed. Or, second impulse, I could trust that Domingo doesn't want to spoil the party. He is as vested into this as I am. He decided to go for the second option. While many leaders are paid for doing that, in that moment, what does he do? He drops his hands. And the only thing he does is to swing himself completely open to Placido Domingo. He says, although for those of you who are watching, that is only a few seconds. For me, who was waiting for Domingo's voice to call me back, that felt like eternity. That magical ending you hear was never practiced over the 2 years. It emerged on the floor with the full risks it takes to innovate when 6 million people are going to watch you. That capacity to innovate when 6 million people are going to are watching you is the new leadership skill we need in our workplaces. Because under social media, under openness, rules of transparency and everything else, you won't always have the luxury to go under the table, design, practice things before you produce. You are constantly under watch, and the only thing that sails you through is the quality of relationships that you create at your place of work, the levels of trust you generate among your co-workers. Let's see just a little bit how that plays out. It's a bit up. Okay. Any thoughts, any comments? What's running through your mind? Like, yeah.
Conductor was vulnerable.
Yeah.
He allowed himself to be vulnerable.
Absolutely. The traditional leader of the orchestra chooses intentionally to be vulnerable so that he can allow the prowess and giftedness of the tenor to come through.
I think also as a leader, it shows the level of trust that he has on his team. Because at that point, you could see his nerves.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
nerve-wracking, but the trust, I trust you, let's do this.
Yeah.
And they're gonna win.
Yeah. You can invest in control mechanisms and systems that are non-human. You know that in the greatest of moments of innovation, what you need is human relationships, trust among them. Yep. Any other comments?
That side of the room is quite quiet.
The show of collaborative satisfaction, you could see in their behavior that, yes, we did this. I got you.
Yeah.
You got me.
Yeah. And because although the video doesn't complete in this way, if you watch it again on YouTube, Placido Domingo pulls Zubin Mehta from the stage. My colleagues asked them, why did you do that? Because it wasn't official break time. He said, I knew that I had put my leader on a roller coaster. I needed them to go and recover. High-performing systems also know that we are human and we need to take care of one another. It's a different quality. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thanks for opening the employee experience stream with this powerful metaphor. As people, I have, in one of my conversations with Temba Chekela, who's with Didata, he talks about HR people as people. As people who take care of people, we need to ask ourselves what our role is in creating this kind of space. In creating space where, as we know, the future of work is changing. There's the issue of volatility, flexibility, agility, etc. How do we create this trust? How do we create this feeling, this sense of co-laboring, of co-designing? And how do we do it in conscious ways and yet in flexible ways? So these are some of the questions we need to be asking ourselves, and some of the answers hopefully will come through the day as we go through other speakers and other presentations. Martin, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
very
you for
much.
having me here. Thank you.